Hello, I'm Ryan once again. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about family relationships and family boundaries. Um, an unknown person said that family is like branches on a tree. We all grow different directions, yet our root remains as one. Um, uh, when is the right time to put your foot down for certain issues? When you should let go? And unfortunately, you never find a manual that will tell you what to do and what not to do in different circumstances. So you have to get your gut instinct, maternal instinct, call it what you want, and deal with the situation as it comes. But in reality, it is a bit of a challenge, especially when you're dealing with teenagers who are learning to become independent, assertive, but at the same time still require guidance. So, what advice would you give to parents who are dealing with teenagers?
Well, I normally hate to give advice because you rarely get it right. It's the same thing as parents don't have a guidebook and instructions book to deal with adolescents. Not even we do as working professionals in the area. Having said that, I think the key area here is um, it depends on a lot of things because we have the dynamic that is the adult, the parent, and his characteristics as a person, the son or daughter and their characteristics as a person, and the dynamic between the two. And it's never the same. So I always remember when I was younger, and my mother used to say, you and your brother couldn't be more opposite than you are. Whatever worked with him doesn't work with you. And it was true. Because we're very, very different people. So now we're saying that we're coming from the same roots to go back to the.
Yes, but it's a different branch.
But it's a totally different branch. So with different leaves, with different angles, totally different. And unfortunately, this is what makes it difficult. Some people would say what makes it also exciting. But we know when things don't go right, it's not exciting, it's difficult. So yes, what advice can we give? I think the core issue here is, and this is something you work on with your children when they're very, very young, is the base of communication. So if you manage to install a communication pattern between you and your son or daughter from a very, very young age and grow up with that communication pattern and always enhance it and invest time in it, it's not natural. So creating communication between a parent and a child is not a natural thing. It's something you work on. Sometimes we take a lot of things for granted that they are they come naturally. It's not true. People that have a good communication relationship with their children, are people who have invested time in creating that communication. And therefore, I say the crucial part in having a good relationship where you can easily put your foot down without destroying the relationship, at the same time be very understanding and very empathic with the adolescent situation, starts from a point where the adolescent feels that you are there and you are openly and actively available to communicate with the person and not to dictate and not to force and not to leave them do as they want. So the extremes are all wrong. I hear it a lot of times that adolescents hate when people put kind of barriers and boundaries to them. It's not true. Well, they won't admit it, but it's not true. An adolescent developmentally needs the freedom to start and exert their individuality within a boundary that keeps them safe. So you see, it's this interplay of the two extremes.
So, within this context, would you be able to define a healthy family relationship?
Definitions are hard. But I think if I had to define it, it's a relationship based on active communication and active listening. So if there is understanding, if there is empathy, so this idea that we need to teach our children that we put ourselves in the position of the other person and feel what the other person is feeling, and therefore the parent would feel what the adolescent is feeling, and the adolescent would feel what the parent is feeling, and therefore they could understand better both perspectives, would lead to better relationships. So I think that is the core issue. What I keep in mind as well is um, the adolescent asserting his individuality. That is very important. Sometimes you might feel it's a bit challenging, and it is, because they start shedding off things that you would have tried to give over the years, and maybe personal values that are good values, but somehow they're kind of shedding them away from them. Well, it's something, it's within a process. They might need to do that. If you restrain that, you might be restraining a lot of other things on an individual expression level for the adolescent. And that's why it's important to give this space within a safe boundary. Now, what is a safe boundary? Well, $1 million question. For each person, the safe boundary is a different thing.
In fact, sometimes setting boundaries can create a sense of guilt, because if I set a boundary, that the adolescent might interpret it as I'm rejecting their right for freedom or something like that. The truth is that when you are setting boundaries, sometimes it's you are setting boundaries because of the behavior, not because of the person. So you're setting boundaries on the basis of a behavior that is acceptable in the family or not acceptable in the family. What are the main destroyers of the parent teenage relationships? Are there any sort of, is it setting too many boundaries? Is it because you can have situations where the teenager may be left completely free, and that is not healthy. Sometimes it's the teenager is being constrained.
So I think we agree that both extremes are wrong. So having no support, no direction, no boundaries, no anything is not healthy. And although it might seem like El Dorado for the teenager, kind of, hey, I can do whatever I want, we know that long term is not healthy, on an attachment level is not healthy, and later on, even the adolescent would regret it because it doesn't give structure. I meet a lot of teens here that might be passing through similar situations, and they kind of yearn to have someone to actually give them direction, to tell them, no, that shouldn't be done. Even if they do it, but someone told them that shouldn't be done. You know, this kind of boundary. So that is not okay. On the other hand, being asphyxiating almost, let us remember that we're not speaking about children anymore. Even with children, it's harmful because we tend to take away all the initiative when we are so much on them, let alone with an adolescent. That, you know, adolescents have been explained as the training camp for adulthood. So it's the phase where you train as a person to become an adult. But you know, it's what happens. Relationships, it's your training to go into an adult relationship later on. If it's friendships, if it's even in education. So it's the crucial years for you to train on what you're going to move on later on. Core skills, it's a training camp. It's like a boot camp of a couple of years. All right. So they need to have some space where to train. You can't allow a person in sports, let's say a footballer, to train in the small room. He wouldn't be able to train. He needs space. And it's the same. To train for adulthood, you need some space. So it's this balance. What is crucial at this age, though, and some parents tend not to realize because of the fast-paced life we're having, and, you know, children are children one day, adolescents the next. So it's very fast transition. Is that if before what you said was Bible, was accepted, no questions asked, no questions will be asked. And that's actually healthy. Even if they're challenging questions, that's actually healthy because it means that critical and analytical thinking are being developed in that adolescent. Even more so, if before you maybe have said have a truth, not to call it a lie, and that paused somehow,
Now it will be changed.
no, it won't. So we meet this on a daily basis. Parents call us, listen, speak to my son, don't tell him I called. How can I do that? So I would randomly find the number and randomly call the student and randomly ask him to come to my office because no one said anything about him, but I think he has a problem. It might have worked in secondary school, but at this age, it doesn't. And they would start, but who told you about this? Only my mom knew. And she said she didn't call you. So who told you about? And they would do the 1 + 1 very easily.
Yes.
And that lack of, when they see the lie over there or the other truth, they lose trust. And if they lose trust at this point, it's even harder to regain because of the skills that they have gained on who to trust and who not to. So it's very important that if there's a trusty relationship between the parent and that is maintained. And that's why communication is important, because I would be the person to say, listen, I'm noticing this, I'm not okay with it. I'm going to call school. Maybe you can speak to someone there. Maybe you're not comfortable to speak with me, and that's fine, because you're 16 and you have your own problems, you need your own space. But I need to make sure, as your parent, that you do this. So you might give the first opportunity by allowing the adolescent to actually seek help himself. The second by calling you, and then the person chooses with whom to go. But you're giving structure with freedom. So it's this idea of structured freedom. Okay? There's a boundary, but you can roam around that boundary. Okay?
Well, actually, we have Parents' Day every year, and every year we meet parents, and more often than not, we hear some statements repeated over and over again, year after year, and it's, I can't talk to my son or daughter anymore. That makes it a bit harder.
Yes, it does. We can look at it in different points here. So we can look at it a bit in retrospect. So have you invested enough in that relationship? You can't expect your son to talk to you if you don't have a relationship. Being a parent does not automatically establish a relationship. Okay? So again, the relationship, the communication is something you work for. Now, if that didn't happen, you're doomed? No. The beauty of relationships is that they can start at any point. You need to work on them, but they can start at any point. And in fact, what we normally suggest in these situations is start working on this relationship. Don't expect your son to tell or your daughter to tell you her most private and intimate things if you never listened. Or if the first thing when she says something is, when she says something about what she's doing or he's doing, would be, no, that's wrong. Don't do that.
Being judgmental. Because
what is so obvious for you as an adult is not obvious in the training camp of the 16, 17, 18-year-old. They need to touch things. They need to experience things. Now, obviously, there are things that you as a parent might say, listen, I understand. So it's the same thing. Look, let's say a relationship you as a parent are not approving of. And the first thing you say is, no, stop, you can't see that person anymore. That is one approach. Another approach could be, listen, I understand that this relationship means a lot for you. Having said that, I'm noticing these traits which I'm not comfortable with. I don't know about you. Maybe we can explore them more, or maybe you would like to take them up with someone else. But as a parent, I do feel that this is unhealthy. And if I continue saying this, I might ask you later on to actually stop everything. So the boundary is still there. You made it clear. At the same time, you gave the freedom for the adolescent to choose
how
to go into that boundary rather than don't.
Okay.
So you see, it's the same thing most of the times, but building this communication where you empathize a lot, so you understand the position of the other person, feel the position of the other person, and then move
to the next level. Okay. One last question. Does the school offer support to parents? when they
Definitely.
feel that kind of the relationship is going downwards.
Definitely. Yeah, whenever parents call, we try to schedule even appointments. They can come here and we can discuss what's happening. Obviously, again, for a relationship to work, we need to have two people. It's never one-sided.
Yes.
So having parents here coming 1, 2, 3 times on their own, that's fine. At some point, we need to ask the adolescent to join in, because the relationship is not with the counselor or with the guidance teacher.
Yeah.
It's a relationship with the son or daughter. So we do offer support. Support is here. They can call. We can schedule an appointment. We can see how we can work it out. But obviously, nothing has to be done behind the student's back. Because from experience, and now it's been a couple of years that we've been doing this work with this age, if you do something behind the adolescent's back, it will bite off. So you'll get troubles back even worse. Because the last thing an adolescent would want is to feel that someone actually fooled him or did something behind his back.
They feel not trusted, not.
Yes. So the moment that they feel that someone is kind of orchestrating something behind their back, you've lost all the communication there. So that's why it's important to be frank, to be very clear, very open from day one. So I guess that's one of maybe a small advice I would give to parents. Be very open about things. I'm not saying accept everything. No, you as a parent have the right to have boundaries and have the right to have don'ts, things that shouldn't be done. Okay, that's fine, but communicate them. Be okay, but explain them. Don't do this. Why? Because no. Explain them. You need to tell me why this is not okay. What is as a parent, what is my fear if you're engaging in this type of behavior? And they explain my fear. So my vulnerability as a parent, yes, I'm afraid that this might happen because I'm worried for you. The basis is what? Care. But if we don't do it, why? Because I care for you. No, doesn't make sense. But if I understand that you have a fear from where care is coming, and at this age they can understand all this process, then it makes it bearable, it makes more sense.
And I think the adolescent would be more open to understand you, because if you're explaining things to me, then it means you respect me. And you respect my intelligence, so...
And you're treating me as an adult.
As an adult.
And again, we're in the training camp for adulthood. So they need to feel treated like adults because they're soon adults.
Yes.
So it's not something that they want because
it will happen.
Because it's there, it's behind the door. So might as well we help them in their training.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I will end this episode with another quote by a German philosopher, Martin Heidegger, who said, "A boundary is not that at which something stops, but that from which something begins." Thank you.